Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Very excited for this webinar today. But first and foremost, thank you for tuning in and joining us for with Trusted Tech Team on our special Intune Done Right, Lock It Down, Scale It Up webinar. If you're an existing client with us, welcome back. And for new clients and customers, welcome. I hope that we have a lot of insightful information. We do have a special offer that we're going to be presenting at the end of the webinar. So make sure you tune in for that. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and get us started. All right. First and foremost, let's talk about the contents. What are we going to be talking about today? We'll start with number one. We're going to talk about the foundational steps for a successful Intune implementation. 2, common mistakes IT teams make when deploying Intune. 3, how automation and policy-based management reduce manual overhead. And 4, why a proper setup leads to a stronger endpoint security. All right, those are all great points. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce all of the speakers today. We have a very, very talented Trusted Tech Team panel today. Very excited to be hosting the webinar as well. But I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I will be the host today for the webinar. My name is Afif Ahmad. I'm the Solutions Delivery Manager here for the Professional Services team here at Trusted Tech Team. Been here at the organization for about 3 years now. Been in the IT space for over a decade. Had the pleasure of working in different industries and verticals such as public education, corporate finance, and the CSP and MSP space. I am a modern work expert, and I would be a subject matter expert in all things endpoint management and endpoint security. But without further ado, if all of the fellow speakers can present themselves, please, and I'll pass it over to Nico Wallace.
All righty. Good morning, everybody. Nice to meet everyone as well. I may be a familiar face on these webinars. I'm the Solutions Practice Director here at Trusted Tech Team. I've been in IT and cloud infrastructure for over 10 years now. I come from the MSP space, so when it comes to service delivery, that was where I got my trials, and then I skilled up in the cloud and modern workspace very quickly through my days at an MSP. Anton, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, happy to take over. Hi, everybody. Happy to see so many people here. My name is Anton, and I'm one of the account executives here at Trusted Tech Team. I've been here for about 2 years, and prior to this, I worked at Microsoft out of their M365 division here in Irvine, California. But my primary focus here at Trusted Tech Team is working with organizations of all sizes across all verticals to build custom Microsoft solutions for them. So with that being said, I'll pass it back to Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim Kosner. I'm one of the cloud architects here at TTT. I've been with the company for a little over a year and a half, and I bring with me 25 years of experience in IT. Over the years, I've worked in a wide range of environments, including CSPs, MSPs, financial services, Department of Defense, and of course, internal IT. Microsoft M365 and modern workspace has been a key part of my toolkit for the past 7 years, alongside other cloud infrastructure and initiatives. With that, I'll hand it back to Afif.
Thank you. Thank you for all the speakers. We'll go ahead and get started. All right, let's jump into it. The foundational steps for a successful Intune implementation. All right, so let me go ahead and reintroduce Intune for everybody who don't have the proper context, but Intune is Microsoft's leading endpoint management solution. We've done webinars surrounding Intune many times, but what's awesome about it is it updates constantly. If you go ahead and see on the screen, there's many, many integrations and adaptations of how Intune has evolved. Starting with the Intune suite, we could see that there's been a lot of support in regards to the identity governance piece. Within the Intune Admin Center, there's been many integrations within PIM administration, which is fantastic, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. But Windows Autopilot, the fantastic automation, drop ship devices, that has evolved too, where it supports not only Windows devices, but Mac OS in those regards. Endpoint analytics for all the data-driven individual IT folks, We have Intune has a lot more data-driven statistics now and analytics when it comes to configuration profiles, update rings, things to that granular nature. Now, of course, we can't forget about the integrations. Within Entra ID, obviously, there's a lot of support within that on-premise infrastructure. If you're leveraging that configuration manager for that hybrid connection or co-management, as known as, there's a lot of support that went into that too. But Microsoft is slowly moving away from it. And most importantly, the highlight piece here, the Copilot and security Copilot piece. So what's fantastic about Intune is, as we all know, when it comes to the enterprise licenses, when we're talking about business premium, E3s, E5s, this is all included, right? And Microsoft has heavily invested within this platform where now it not only supports just exclusively Windows devices, but the support of Mac OS, iOS, Linux, Chrome OS, and Android devices. So it's definitely exciting to see the growth and support of the endpoint community and how a lot of people have made these suggestions to Microsoft and how it's evolved. But importantly, if you may be using an E3 or E5 or Business Premium, you have this available to you. And one thing that I want to take apart from this webinar, we want to make sure that you have everything configured correctly. So the 3 key technical areas to review before any Intune deployment are these exact ones on the screen. So let me go ahead and begin. Number 1, analyze your device management infrastructure. So what I really mean by that is, when was the last time you have reviewed your device stack in the organization? Are you still leveraging those 2013 Optiplexes, or are there some BYOD devices that are just used by some users that registered one time? This is what I'm talking about. It's very important to know that if you're going to be adopting Intune to be your mobile device manager, that you go ahead and assess that the current device stack is going to be the device stack for the next 5 years, 10 years, right? So there's a lot of consideration when it comes to that, especially when it comes to a hybrid environment. We want to make sure that we clean up all those stale devices or anything that's in Entra ID that may be registered, that we go ahead and perform, any type of housekeeping. And number 2, which transitions right to it, which is evaluate your Microsoft Entra ID topology. So this is a very important one. When it comes to Entra ID, as we all know, that's the cyber identity solution for Microsoft. But what this exactly means is, if you're an environment or an organization that leverages hybrid cloud, it's very important that you review your tenant configuration, the synchronization health, and this has everything to do with Entra Connect, right? So everything that is hybrid cloud supported, we want to make sure that the connector is updated, that all the devices that are being scoped on a device group are the ones that we want synced and reflecting over in Entra ID. And more importantly, that the device join type does reflect accurately what it is, right? Are they Entra hybrid joint? Are they Entra registered? This matters, especially when it comes to deployment to all policies and profiles. And number 3, the very important thing I would say, especially in the world of emerging cybersecurity risks and vulnerabilities, and in a world of emerging AI, is really understanding everything that is surrounding by data governance, right? And what I mean is, are we protecting our users in the organization? And more importantly, are we protecting their devices, right? It's in the due diligence of the organization that the users, whatever device that they're using, that you have properly protected them for every cyber threat that is possibly out there, right? Immediately on the identity portion, as we've talked about many times in former webinars, could be conditional access, right? And that also applies on the endpoint level as well, especially in a world of BYOAI, right? That's a thing. Users will be leveraging, ChatGPT, importing data, company data into ChatGPT or any type of GPT tools, and they're all using them stemming from that corporate device. So it's very, very considered to be a high priority, and we definitely need to do our due diligence in understanding that, which pivots to the next transition. which I'll go ahead and pass it over to Jim. Thank you.
Thanks, Afif. Successful implementation starts with readiness. Here's a 7-step roadmap to follow for inventorying devices to supporting your help desk. Review licensing, policies, rollout planning, and internal communication before you begin. Treat this like a project and not an everyday engagement. Like in step 4, this is a great time to review your group policies and see if they're all still applicable and which ones are not applicable anymore.
Definitely. That would be like with Intune, how it supports ADMX, right? How we can import these GPOs. This is the time where I would say it's definitely important to determine, hey, can these GPOs that we formerly relied on, can they now be transitioned and evolved into configuration profiles and policies, right? And number 2, definitely reviewing your device stack, right, Jim?
Yeah, and as far as your advice stack too, and your group policies, we see very commonly that there's group policies that are still in place from Windows 7 or before because your domain has lived for so long, and some of these policies are just no longer applicable, but yet they're still being applied to your devices.
Yeah, I would use this time to like spring clean out your ADMX files, export that. You used Intune's built-in tool. It was last year was in public preview. I think now it's actually more GA, but definitely it can use to skim out what group policies are just deprecated, not in use. Maybe they applied to like Windows 7 and XP machines, and we're now coming to end of life for Windows 10. So also take that into consideration. If you have Windows 10 out in your environment, end of life for Windows 10 is October 2025. So use that, get an inventory of your devices. What may not be compatible with Windows 11, like TPM 2.0. There's a bunch of hardware constraints that are out there. So using Intune in that fashion is what people are starting to look at as Windows 10 comes into life right now. I think step 3, determining licensing costs. Intune's plan 1 is included in a lot of different SKUs, starting from like the business premium. Anton will go into this later in the webinar, but later, business premium includes the SKU, ME3 includes the SKU, and so does ME5. You can also procure the license a la carte. So even if you're in your preliminary states of testing out Intune and onboarding devices, procuring one of those licensing or even having one of those SKUs with the licenses active will enable the admin center, right? I'll kind of give it back to Afif to talk about policy and infrastructure.
Definitely. But before we get to that, the key areas to validate: device inventory assessment, device roadmap alignment, and infrastructure review. Jim, do you mind chiming in on any of these?
Well, like Nico just mentioned, like Windows 10 devices is a common device that we still see out there that's being deployed. And there's reasons for that, but keep in mind that end of support for it is in October, like you mentioned. And those devices are still applicable to have Intune work for them and stuff like that. But going to Windows 11, you need that TPM 2.0 in order for that to happen. And are you still relying on on-prem file structure or file servers? I mean, maybe that's why you haven't transitioned yet. And if so, maybe it's time to consider transitioning to SharePoint, and then you can be going forward to the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, to tie on off on that too is like, there's so many like tools and productivity tools that come with M365 suite that you can layer in. Intune and Entra are just like the starting points. That's why we always recommend like we take a look at Entra or we take a look at Intune first, right? Because this is where the critical aspects of the domain, the cloud domain, are being built, right? It's like, would you go and stand up your infrastructure or your organization without setting up Forest and AD? These are the types of this is how we'd like to reimagine the service. Is you're taking all the microservices that Active Directory typically has attached to it, and you're pivoting that towards a SaaS solution. So no more managing that server, no managing schemas, no more transferring FSMA roles once your AD server is out of compliance or your end of life on your server. That's the kind of the vision that we want to provide you guys, right? So the rollout plan, I think, is also super important here. Is like understanding how you're going to get all your devices over. That's a really good question to ask yourself as you guys transition to the journey. Is like, hey, am I going to phase devices out? Am I going to do a phase migration, or am I going to do a rip and replace? Am I going to go to every single PC, clear out the active join directory, and then join it to the cloud domain, right? These are the types of questions we like to ask, and we like to guide you, right, from an architecture perspective.
Definitely. Well said, Nico. And Jim, you and I were talking a little bit before the show started, but you ultimately said that investing into Intune can reduce the cost of overhead of on-prem like hardware and equipment. Do you mind elaborating on that, please?
Yeah, so I mean, by going to Intune, I mean, once you go full cloud and are able to stop relying on your DCs, you're able to power down all those DCs that you may have for redundancy, as well as you no longer have to worry about the overhead of maintaining and making sure those DCs are getting Windows updates. And then every few years, you got to do that OS update going from 2016 to 2019 or all those different OS versions. And you don't have to keep maintaining them, nor as well as it's like Intune has a lot less troubleshooting issues that come up with it, unlike the DC computers. Like sometimes you have syncing issues with DCs, and there's a lot more variables in place for why it may not be properly communicating with your DC. Even like when you look at the clock, like if the clock of your workstation gets a couple seconds ahead of your DC, you're going to have security issues. With Intune, it's a lot more tolerant of that.
Definitely. Well said. Thank you. I think that really applies to a lot of the potential clients that may be on this call. But one thing that I also wanted to highlight are the mobile requirements, right? So that's been a very, very popular project engagement that we've been seeing here on the service solutions delivery side. Before we begin, any type of adoption for mobile devices into Intune, if you're leveraging iOS devices, Apple Business Manager is definitely something that I would get started up and kicked up and make sure that when you're doing device purchasing, it's all under that portal, and you'll also get that discount. But Android Enterprise is that equivalent over on the Android side. But just wanted to throw that out there for all the IT folks and CTOs and IT directors and sysadmins on the call.
Yeah,
we'll go ahead and continue.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are looking at ways to kind of make everything streamlined and automated, and that's kind of where I come into play. I'm a big automation nerd, so I love it when systems kind of all collaborate together. You don't have like these, you don't have all these different, SaaS all over the infrastructure, less points of entries, reduced attack surfaces. That's my jam. So we'll talk about a little bit of automation, streamlining some of the overhead that is currently inside your guys' environment. So one of the things we usually like to start with in any of our project engagement is, where do I get the most ROI out of Intune? Like, it's already included in my licensing, so it's already covered in the set that I'm paying for, right? Now, where can I interject it to make sure I'm getting the best bang for my buck? So in any project engagement, we'll start with Autopilot. This is how we're provisioning devices, right? So perfect state for us here at TTT, our gold standard is white glove, zero touch provisioning, right? I want to get to the point where IT admins don't have to ever touch a computer to provision it. I want to be able to drop ship it to my remote users. I want to be able to pretty much press a button and it goes up and stands up the profile. And using personas, it will go ahead and install applications, patch the device, push out updates, do whatever it needs to do to bring it to a managed IT state. So whatever my IT standards are for my devices, it will always natively have that from a device perspective. And then when the persona gets loaded onto the device, it will then go ahead and provision the applications and configuration policies that need to adhere to the device depending on the person's persona. And if you guys are following along with Microsoft does this for every single one of their products. So when it comes to least privilege, RBAC, things of that nature, and when it comes to making sure that we are secure, we're doing everything in this dynamic group or this dynamic identity, right? Based on organizational unit, managing director, we have location. We can build these queries out to do automated provisioning, not only for the devices and their policies, but also for their licensing. A lot of admins that I get into these organizations and I start architecting their modern workspace is they're not leveraging dynamic licensing. They're not leveraging the attributes that you would typically leverage in an AD environment. All of that stuff can be cloned and copied into Entra. So leverage those attributes. You have the original 16, and then you have another 16 custom. You can build so many different automated queries, flows, triggers. You can layer SharePoint and Power Automate on top to start pretty much automating your entire onboarding process, right? And once you have that built, and so everything we do here at TTT, we design with very like, reduction in overhead. We're reducing the amount of time it takes IT staff to perform this. So you guys can actually focus on the human element of things. Like you can focus on supporting the end user, providing good service because you know there's systems in play that are building out this infrastructure for you, right? On top of on top of automated provisioning, you can also layer data-driven insights. So if you guys do have a Copilot 365 license and you guys are starting to leverage AI at the moment now, you can actually natural language query prompt Copilot admin or Intune Admin Center. You can ask it how many devices with the software is currently being provisioned. You can ask it what kind of hardware you're using, currently in your environment, what's the percentages. It's in public preview still, so put that in a grain of salt. With everything in AI, we QA it very thoroughly, but it's just this layer of data that we've never had access from any type of inventory tool before. So Microsoft is doing a great job in terms of providing us the level of support that the admins need to be able to get these insights for executive, for stakeholders, for C-suite, and then make very conscious decisions for our organization as we move forward in device management. So it hasn't been easier than before to pretty much use devices as terminals and making sure it's one whole ecosystem starting from the operating system layer, which is great.
Definitely. One thing I want to chime in, Jim and I had a conversation the other day while a client was still leveraging, there's the manual device provisioning, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love me a Ghost server. But if you're still leveraging Ghost for computer imaging or Clonezilla or anything of that nature,
yeah.
I think it's time to make that adoption and evolution within your tech stack in your organization. Don't get me wrong, I do love it. It's a classic. But I think it's time to let go and bring in something new that will definitely get your return on your investment. And one thing that I definitely wanted to chime in, what Nico said, our goal here at Trusted Tech Team is to pretty much align with your business goals. So whatever forms of automation that you're seeking to have, we can definitely make that happen for you. Which pivots us to our next slide. Policies.
Well, I also want to quickly chime in too. Another very underutilized thing too, as far as the automation goes too, is dynamic groups. Using the dynamic groups to define permissions and applications and configurations. Dynamic groups are such an underutilized thing, and you can do that targeting the user attributes. But yeah. Definitely. Continue on here though, thinking of policies and profiles as your UX or user experience for IT. Done right, they create a smooth, secure, and scalable experience. Map policies to your tech stack, apps, identity, access, and data use. SSO and automatic account sync reduces support calls and improves day one productivity. Work hard to be lazy is a personal mantra I created and have shared for years. It means investing in the time to automate things now, and that way you don't have to keep doing them over and over again. This frees up time for you and also removes the human error.
I love it. Work hard to be lazy. I think every IT professional on this call can definitely relate to that. We want to be able to, build our environments very thoroughly in detail, so they pretty much work for themselves, right? And Jim, you pretty much hit all the dots. Making sure that that user experience for your end users is the goal, right? Through policies, through understanding your tech stack, through integrations that you can make within Entra, such as SSO and automatic account syncs, are all possible, right? And with these steady improvements that M365 is constantly making, I'm only excited to see how the adoption is going to be with Copilot and other AI tools.
I mean, let's also not forget infrastructure. I do see a lot of the questions about people having infrastructure. We do have Azure. Like the Azure is a very, I would say, intricate relationship with modern work. They do coincide together. So if you guys do have infrastructure related, say there's identity tied to dependencies on-prem, definitely come bring those conversations to us, put them into QA. We'll do our best to answer them as we kind of talk about the Intune conversation, right? We're looking about deprecating the microservices that are provided by like WinSys servers, SCCM, AD. Oh, yeah. It's definitely a longer drawn out conversation as we talk about getting rid of AD servers completely, right? Because we all know there's something out there still using Kerberos authentication, things of that nature, and we want to make sure that we highlight those dependencies. We find their replications or their pivot points or their refactors to a PaaS or a SaaS solution, such as like SQL or any kind of critical workloads that need to get pushed up. We plan that out thoroughly before we do any type of tie-offs on AD, right? So it's not us kind of saying, hey, you can, after you implement Intune, turn off your AD server. It's us saying there is a way or there's a process for us to get there. There is definitely a path that can be crafted out to be full cloud in a SaaS capacity or a PaaS capacity, right? We just have to, roadmap that for you guys.
Definitely. Thank you, Nico. Which pivots us to our next slide here. We want to further elaborate, policies and profiles and tailoring the experience, right? I think the most important thing is if you're going to be adopting a tool, an MDM solution that has all this automation and AI capability, the most important thing is to align any of the policy design of your tech stack and business goals with the end product, right? And so what do I really mean by that? What are some ways that your end users can benefit through these different type of customizations that we can make within Intune, right? So for example, one thing that hits to my mind is that can hit pretty much the seamless cross-device user experience and enterprise account sync to increase productivity is the configuration profile that I want to elaborate on is the automatic OneDrive sync. Jim, I know that that's something that a lot of clients will definitely hit us up about, that you are the face and SME of. Do you mind elaborating on that?
Yeah, that OneDrive policy, it really does a lot for you because it does the automatic, it has the silent sign-in option. And with that silent sign-in option, it lets you silently sign into your Microsoft products for your Teams, your OneDrive, your Word, and that carries through. You can even have a policy to let it automatically sign into your Edge, and from your Edge, it will automatically sign, just from the Windows login, can sign into your Edge automatically, sync your user profile, and then from there, carry on even further. And if you go to like OWA or Outlook Web Access or a SharePoint site, it passes on that authentication. So you can kind of get through the walls of authentication. I mean, there's still the conditional access policy that are applied, but you're not getting prompted at every layer of that onion to get to that resource.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
also from like policy implementation, where we're kind of tying off that, like certificates, like I know you guys are doing like authenticated certificates for your devices. You can push that through a configuration policy for different locations. You can have trusted IPs for configured devices. There's a plethora of things. Even SharePoint, like I know a lot of organizations are looking at SharePoint with like a really big lens right now because of the AI features that are kind of being layered on into the productivity suite. SharePoint can those shared drives can be mapped to a device per persona, right? So no more going in, logging onto a device, looking for a network drive, storing in credentials, or using the AD profile to actually map those, or using a batch script to map those network drives to the device. Like that is all done from natively. I don't even have to create a batch script in Intune and deploy it, right? For more custom environments, I can do a batch script to, deploy printers. I can deploy that, via universal print. There's so many different customizations within Intune that you can really get into the nitty gritty, like from PowerShell scripts all the way down to, OneDrive silent sync and sign on.
Definitely. No, I love the all the feedback that we're having in here. But definitely, I would think that if you're listening to this and you're in an organization that hasn't adopted it or want to have that conversation with us, please do. Drop a comment to us, email us. We'll definitely start that engagement and we're definitely happy. But I also wanted to highlight, if you see on that phone, that's actually the latest official logo for Microsoft Intune. Just wanted to give a shout out to that. I think it's pretty cool.
I know I'm seeing a lot of questions about compliance and I'm seeing a lot of questions about security. I would love to get you there. Make sure that you guys get those into Q&A so that we can answer them. So Ashley can go ahead and throw those to us so we can answer all your questions at the end of the webinar.
Thank you, Nico.
Of course.
Nico, I wanted to hand this over to you. Mike Russo over at Sensky Services. You and I, we worked on this project together. But it was a huge project for them. They definitely got their return on investment. But do you mind sharing and elaborating about this project?
Yeah, Sensky, you guys have probably seen this kind of around, but Sensky is kind of a very unique case study in the sense that they started from a Google workspace. They were off-platform. We migrated them over to Microsoft, and immediately they started, going from, okay, how do we get more devices in? How do we do this correctly? It was great for us because we were able to show them what a true greenfield M365 full cloud deployment looks like. And now they're able to kind of scale out their infrastructure and the organization to, I think right now they're sitting at 2,500 users. They were originally at 236 users. They went through a very crazy M&A phase, and for that M&A phase to be extremely successful and their growing phases to be successful, we had to do Intune. There was no way around it. We were trying to figure out, okay, we're about to adopt or pretty much acquire this company that has 1,000 users. What are we going to do? All the devices are locally joined to AD. Their servers kind of sitting out through the infrastructure. So it was a long project process. It was over, I would say, a multitude of different projects. I would say a period of over a year and a half of time that gets into the state that they're in. But they were adopting, legacy equipment, over and over again. So we had to create a process and streamline that for them to make sure that they weren't collecting any tech debt, right? So current state where Sensky is today, they're able to onboard, they moved facilities to their new Austin facility. They were able to onboard another 1,000 users with zero tech debt. They're all in one singular tenant. There's no existing tenants outside of Sensky services. There's no existing infrastructure on premise outside of their services. They're 100% full staff, and they are well along their way to becoming a fully cloud enterprise organization, which is, it's the dream for a lot of people. It really is. It takes the steps to getting in and like being forward thinking and just stepping into the cloud and start like leaning heavily into it, and you'll see that return on investment. So they have roughly right now 2,500 users, and I would say their IT staff is about 4-man strong across all of US and all of Canada. There's no way that's achievable through on-premise infrastructure. There'd be so much overhead and technological debt that they would have to adhere to like keep this afloat.
Definitely. And to anybody on the call tuning in that can relate to this case study, I think that's where Trusted Tech Team would be a perfect fit for you, especially if you're doing mergers and acquisitions, trying to consolidate all of your platforms under Microsoft 365. That'll definitely be a strong case for you there. But I also wanted to elaborate over here that you see on the screen. So they adopted 1,400 mobile devices, right? To tell you a little bit about their business, they're a landscaping service, right? And they have a lot of landscapers or field techs that are out on the field that are leveraging, iOS devices, Android devices, and it was really key for them to get them under one MDM platform. As Nico mentioned, they did a lot of M&A, so through that, we had to sparse and do a lot of discovery. They were leveraging AirWatch at one moment, Cisco Meraki MDM. What we had to really do is just find how all these little child companies were leveraging everything and fully adopt them into Intune. So yes, it is definitely possible that you could do that, which is fantastic.
So another thing that also Mike has mentioned too here in like this quote that you guys are seeing is like, and you guys are probably have got this idea from just listening to the webinar. Intune isn't something you deploy out of the box. It's not something I go procure license with any Microsoft product. You don't buy the license and then deploy and think it works outside of the box. That applies to Defender. The word or the motto I like to go by is your out of box solution. You purchase out of box, you get out of box solution. It's never going to be custom tailored to your environment, right? So Intune is also one of those products where it needs to be really take into consideration what the organization is doing, what the IT practice is, what is the overarching strategy, what is coming up on our roadmap, and how am I going to deploy this service that is going to fulfill the needs of my future problems and any of my existing problems, right? So that's why, when you come look at take styles from us, or you come to engage with us, everything is very custom. We'd like to take care of you. The white glove service clearly comes in here, and that's what Jim and Afif they pride themselves on. So that was a really big point for Mike is making sure that we were looking at the future, we were looking proactively, and what we were doing to circumvent those risks.
Well said, Nico. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Anton Ragan. Please elaborate. We'd love to hear this case study that you had collected for us.
Sure. Yeah. And Sensky, obviously one of the great case studies with, 1,400 devices under their management. Intune, there's a huge need there. But like I had mentioned kind of at the start of the webinar, we work with organizations of all sizes across all verticals. And I had the pleasure of working with a firm called Eastline Motors. They were sitting at about 250 users instead of the 1,400 from Sensky. But they came to us with a pretty simple request, right? We want Intune implementation org-wide, but we have to take into consideration our budget, right? So what I did with them, the same thing that we do with every organization that we work with, is we started by popping the hood on their licensing environment, because typically these things will start with the licensing, and we need to know where they stand now so we know how to get them to where they need to be, right?
Definitely.
Through our discovery, we found out that they were leveraging a Microsoft 365 Business Basic license and a few business standard licenses, and they were pairing with all of their users in Entra ID Plan 1. And they had some miscellaneous licenses like Exchange Online Kiosk inboxes. And the good news for Eastline Motors is that if you want to implement Intune from a licensing perspective, Intune is included with several different M365 bundles. And what I found for them is they had two avenues they could go down. One, they could move all users to a business premium license, which includes Intune by default. But we also had to consider their budget constraints. For this user specifically, what I uncovered is that a lot of their users in their environment were back of house employees like service technicians and warehouse workers. And so the business premium license felt overkill for a lot of those users. Wow. So what we were able to do is I recommended moving them to a frontline license, an F3 license through Microsoft. The reason the F3 license was a good fit for this firm in particular is because of all of those back of house employees. The frontline license, what it includes is your modern work solutions and a very small inbox. The F3 includes a kiosk inbox, which is only 2 gigabytes, so it's not very big. But for your service technicians, it's not like they're sending emails to clients, back and forth every day. So their email requirements were small. But by moving them to the F3 license and consolidating from their licenses for most of their users, what we ended up doing was for kind of their executive team and leadership, we moved them to the business premium because they had more robust needs. At the end of the project, kind of by working with us on some consolidation, the result was, one, we reduced their licensing spend by 19%. So their CFO was very happy when we told them that they were going to cut their licensing spend by 19%. The IT director I was working with was ecstatic because they now had org-wide Intune coverage, and they were working on 3 different locations on the East Coast. So having Intune was a necessity for him and his team. And the team, the IT team, just overall increased team efficiency, right? Not needing to worry about deploying these devices, being able to leverage Intune for their MDM solution was a big time saver for them. So that's just one of the many success stories that we'll have when kind of helping customers on their journey to adopt Intune.
Fantastic, thank you, Anton. So you're telling me that any of the clients and customers on this call, we can go on a call with you and you can review our licensing and pretty much almost save us money and get us more solutions out of our licensing?
Yeah, that's typically the case. Is we'll always look, because there's typically room for optimization, right? And if we can help you kind of identify ways to consolidate licenses and save money while, taking into consideration your key priorities, for the year, if you're looking for an Intune adoption or something else, we're always happy to take a look.
Thank you, sir. Well said. All right. So now that we got that case study, I think a lot of us now have an overview of how to get started. I'll pass it over to Anton again to elaborate on all the different license SKUs that will provide us Intune.
Yeah. So obviously, when you're talking about Intune, there are several different avenues that you can take for your users from a licensing perspective. So what licensing bundles include Intune by default, right? And as I had mentioned, we'll start with the frontline license, otherwise known as the F1 or the F3. The user profile for frontline licenses, these are really best suited for, frontline workers, or I call them back of house workers, right? Whether you have someone in a warehouse or someone who, they don't have robust needs, you still need to manage their device, and they'll need a user profile, in the organization, but they don't have very robust requirements. The F1 and the F3 are the best licenses, when it comes to including Intune. Why it matters is, obviously the frontline SKUs will give you some identity and security, solutions, but it's a restricted suite. So you have to take into consideration that the frontline license is not good for everyone. Primarily, the restrictions are your small inbox size. It'll be 2 gigabytes. So you need to make sure that any user on the F3 license doesn't have robust mail requirements. But moving up the list, next up, you'll see the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. I saw some commenters talking about how they're leveraging Business Premium. And in the industry, Business Premium is known as the best bang for your buck. The Business Premium license is best suited for small and medium businesses, right? It's a really robust licensing package. With the restriction that you're capped out at 300 users on the Business Premium license. So any organization at 300 users or fewer, the Business Premium is the best license. Not only does it include your full modern work solution suite, it also includes Intune and Entra ID for your identity and access management and Defender. So it includes a ton of the cornerstones that you'll need as a part of an Intune rollout. However, moving up the list for organizations that are at 300 users and above, you're most likely going to be assessing the Microsoft enterprise licensing. So you'll see either the E3 or the E5 license. The E3 and the E5 licenses are also incredibly robust, and they're more suited for enterprise level organizations. These are organizations who are really looking for deep compliance. They want to implement zero trust policies and have a robust layer of security. The enterprise license is best suited for those types of organizations. Now, occasionally you'll run into an organization that's leveraging a lower tier of license, like an Office E1 or an Office E3. Those are distinctly different from the Microsoft E3. Thank you, Microsoft, for those naming conventions. But for an organization leveraging an Office E1 or Office E3, they're not going to get Intune and Entra ID included by default, but they may still want access to those features. So for them, the license that they'll be looking to add on is the EMS or Enterprise Mobility and Security license, an EMS E3 or E5. So by throwing the EMS E3 or E5 add-on to like a lesser license, you're mostly going to benefit from the deep compliance that you would normally get with a full E3 license, but you're just piecing it together maybe due to cost constraints, right? So for organizations that may be leveraging the lesser license but still want to take advantage of, Intune and Entra ID, the EMS add-on is the way to go. And then finally, we're getting to the Intune standalone license, right? You can always buy Intune on its own. But, the thing is, as we mentioned before, you really need an identity and access management solution like Entra ID is a requirement for implementing Intune. So unless you have something already in place, the Intune standalone may not work for everyone, right? But it is for the minimalists, people just trying to piece together one thing at a time, that license will be for them. But Afif, I'll pass it back to you. That's it on licensing.
Thank you, sir, for that elaborate breakdown. Very insightful. I think I even learned something. But I'll definitely say this for all the viewers. Obviously, if you're an organization that's 300 users or less, the best bang for your buck is going to be that Business Premium. But if you're above that 300 user list, I'm going to say the best bang for your buck right now is actually the E5. And for all the other architects on the call, please support me on this one, because in the world of now we're leveraging things like Copilot or any other AI tools, I'm already thinking about data governance and security, and that E5 comes with it, right? So Nico, I know that you've came across a lot of clients, and through project engagements, it's a natural progression that they might even upgrade to an E5 due to those reasons. Do you mind elaborating about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just talking, if you are an IT leader and you're trying to take the best steps for your organizations to remain secure, compliant, I saw a question about how are we preventing people from exfilling data. That only comes with things like endpoint compliance, which comes with an E5, that comes with automatic sensitivity labeling, which is now a requirement. It is not an optional thing for most organizations anymore. This with GPT and AI and agentic AI now coming into the fold, we need to be really, really selective about what we are putting out in our organization, what data is currently existing, how long is that data staying active, where does that data go, how does it retain, how am I managing, handling, and putting security onto that data. This should be the focal point of everyone. What I'm seeing a lot of organizations do is kind of fall by the wayside is in terms of adopting this solution, where I'd say Intune is, I would say the preliminary Intune Entra SharePoint, getting into the cloud is the preliminary steps to then leveraging the higher levels of E5, which are, Defender, Defender XDR, Defender Plan 2, Arc for Defender for Cloud, things of that nature, and then layering in compliance to do your QA. Most organizations now, as you're starting to notice, are getting way more compliant. There are way more federal protections, way more like HIPAA, PCI, PII. Those regulations are coming across the board for multiple verticals. So this is now becoming a frame of reference for most people. Is like this is a requirement. This is no longer optional. And now I'm starting to see even like the higher suites of E5 are becoming a requirement for best practice and protection. So definitely something to take a look into and talk to us about, and then we'll go on to the next slide.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for adding to that. I'll pass it over to Jim. And is your IT team ready for this Intune deployment? Jim, please elaborate for us.
Yeah, as we wrap up, let's ask a real quick question. Is your team ready for Intune? Readiness really comes down to two categories. Team readiness. Make sure your team isn't overloaded. Scoping, testing, training, it takes time. Designate a technical lead to own the project, and identify the skill gaps. If needed, bring in a partner or invest in training. And then last but not least is project execution. Break the work into streams like MFA rollout and device enrollment and policy creation. Also, don't forget to anticipate risks, unsupported device, conflicting policies, and user resistance. Use structured methodologies like Kanban or waterfall to maintain project momentum. Intune is powerful, but it needs the right plan and the right people behind it.
Definitely. Well said. I love how you said treat it like a project, because it truly is. If you're an organization that may be a 2-man or 3-man team, definitely put into consideration all the potential risks, right, that we were talking about throughout the duration of this webinar. But I love the fact that you just put like a Kanban or just like common waterfall. I think the key is definitely going to be, having that alignment with your team, right? The more that you can put on a board to then execute XYZ tasks, the more organized, you'll definitely be. And if there is a skill gap, if full humility, I've been there, on a 2-3 person team. And clearly, none of us in the room were, SMEs in the particular subject when it came to adopting Intune at the time. But we did have a great partner to lean on. And I think that's definitely key when it comes to a successful deployment where you're going to get the most ROI of your organization. So that peacefully transitions us to find a trusted deployment partner when it comes to the deployment of Intune. So we have this nice little flow chart here that everyone can see. But if you're in the market to shop for a partner, this is definitely what I would look for. Number one, are they a Microsoft Solutions partner? Do they have all the solutions designations, right? Key ones that I would look at is modern work, infrastructure, and security. That's kind of like the key. Fortunately, here at Trusted Tech Team, we proudly have all 6 designations, right? Stemming into AI and Azure. So really proud that we definitely have that. But number 2, the track record and project portfolio. across hybrid cloud and native environments, right? So in the market of you shopping, getting quotes or bids for your project, definitely don't be afraid to ask what their track record or what the project portfolio of that said organization has, right? We proudly name one within this presentation, and we definitely have more in our bag that we could share. But I think in full transparency, it's key for you to collect as much testimonies to understand these intricate environments and see if they really do align with yours, right? And brings us to our next step here that we've been talking about. Are they going to be aligned with your business tech stack and goals, right? Are they going to give you a cookie cutter solution? If they are, I would not entertain that at all, because we're in the world of emerging, all these different technologies. One of the things that we really emphasize on is just like the efficiency piece, right? The transparency, the communication. Find a organization or a partner that's going to be aligned with your best interests. And definitely here at Trusted Tech Team, we do. But Nico, do you mind elaborating on the last four?
Yeah, I mean, so the last four, realistically, PMO, we found that most successful projects have a dedicated project management team. These people are very important to aligning your executive stakeholders, your technical talent, and as well as your contracted vendor to make sure the project goes to plan. We're addressing everything that needs to get addressed because I've seen so many things be missed after a successful implementation. We missed this policy, we didn't adhere to this. So PMO is going to keep everything in line. You want someone who's trust like vetted, CSAT, NPS, like they actually have history doing this. I was kind of born and raised in the AD realm, and then I kind of transitioned to cloud. I think so was Jim. So like we want to make sure people have experience deploying this. You don't want to be wasting your time and money second guessing doing the research. You want to be paying someone to do the research. So that's why it's really important to find someone who's done this before. Post project support. So people who are going to offer that elevated experience after you're done with the engagement. That's a key. Microsoft changes their products, I think now quarterly. It might as well be monthly. There's something changing. I remember particularly just a keen memory of mine when I was an architect and engineer was I was looking for device encryption, and it was always in this one place at one given point in time under one blade. And after a 3-month period of time, I wasn't in the Intune tenant or in the portal. It changed, and the process to put BitLocker onto a Windows 10 or 11 device, that changed, and I was so lost, and I was like digging around looking at all these different forums, and I finally found it on some weird obscure random Reddit forum. So that's the type of problems and like issues you'll run into as you guys go full cloud is you want to have that support in your back pocket, right? And cost and value. So like bundling these things together, it makes the engagement. So we're not an MSP here at Trusted Tech Team, so we don't plan to be on one at any given point in time. We want to elevate and supercharge your IT teams, give them the tools they need, the staff that they need, so you guys don't have to become like Modern Work or Azure specialists, right? You can just leverage us, bring those problems to us, and we can help you facilitate and solve them. But I want to jump really quickly into the next slide. I know there's a ton of Q&A, and I'm going to leave a little bit of open time for everyone to stick around and ask questions. But let's just go into the offer really quick. Everyone's been asking for this. I know if you guys have come to me for an Intune program or you've come to Gabe and you were like, oh, that's a very big implementation. I've boiled it down for you. We have now a quick start, jumpstart program that we can pretty much, kind of show you what Intune looks like from a very fundamental level. Get you the bone set up so that you have at least the skeletal structure to build on top of your foundation with. So, this includes, about one configuration profile. We're going to do an application deployment. We're going to do some conditional access review with some compliance review as well, and as well some baseline compliance. So we're also going to review your prerequisites to getting in Intune. So you guys you're leading with your best foot, right? We're going to do also a device hash, an Autopilot deployment profile. It only requires one license, so you only got to go to Anton for one, get one of those licenses in. And then from there, once you guys are in the Jumpstart program, we set up a 90-minute review and walkthrough where we're going to build a lot of these things on camera with you. So going back to that statement of supercharging your IT teams, we are training you and giving you the tools and abilities you need to be successful in this deployment. We want people to adopt this program through their own benefit and not just ours. So please come talk to me, come talk to Gabriel Hari, who was in the chat earlier. We'll solution something out for you, and we'll start having this higher level conversation. But transitioning into the last slide, and now the point I think everyone wants to get to is the Q&A. Afif, let's kick off that, and let's start answering some questions.
All right. Some of the questions here.
Let's see. Okay, all right. So some of the questions. Does Microsoft or third-party training company provide hands-on training to get proficient with Intune? I think I can answer that if you want to answer it.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we provide training. We do workshops. We do assessments. We do everything from a custom engagement, from training, workshops, adoption, implementation, optimization. So the entire life cycle of the product we can handle and pretty much handle for you. Second question.
I'll take this second question. I'm going to designate this one over to Jim.
Okay.
This is from Greg Lett. And Greg is asking, does Microsoft Intune connector for Active Directory need to be updated soon?
Yeah, so there is a current version there was a version that's been out for a while of the Intune connector. That version of it does not auto-update. You have to transition. I believe the cutoff is this month. They did not give a date this month. They just said this month. And the newer version, though, will auto-update. But the newer one does have a little bit extra dependencies to set it up. So it's not as easy as the original version of the Intune connector. But it does, once you get it set up, it will auto-update itself and we'll do the same thing the Intune connector has been doing.
Wonderful. Right. Thank you. We have a question here from Roger Morira. Can Intune be accepted from another MDM? For instance, I use Mozile for our Mac devices. Good question. So Intune does accept another MDM specifically for Mac devices, but currently it's only Jamf. It does not support Mozile, from my understanding. I'll give this question over to Nico from William Bronich. How does Intune OneDrive silent sign-on policy work? We have OneDrive that signs in with SSO, but not a specific policy. Good one.
Yeah, that's a good question. So essentially, how silent sign-in works from a GPO perspective or an AD perspective is you configure the policy, you tie it to a tenant, and then you tie it to a persona. And as long as that device is Entra joined and has a 365 account linked to it, it would then go ahead and configure OneDrive silent sign-in and sync. From an Intune perspective, it's the same kind of process. You build a configuration policy, you tie it to the device, and it uses its the Microsoft tenant ID to use that persona to silently sign in and sync the devices. And then you can use the configuration profile to determine which home folders, so like your documents, downloads, photos, things of that nature, which home folders you are actually going to sign on and sync, so that those that file structure and logic gets replicated into your OneDrive. So now you face less of those problems with those end users that just happen to be really crummy to their laptops and somehow misplace, lose, destroy. Now those things become terminals, and you can just rip and replace at B. So you can reduce that rolling cost as well.
Thank you. I'll take this question here from AJ Amir. Can you quickly cover BYOD? Yeah, so when it comes to BYOD, Intune does support BYOD devices. The registration of an enrollment of a BYOD device is very different from what we've been talking about with Autopilot. So that's going to be, all things in the realm of company portal. AJ, definitely inquiry, send that email and we'll have a consultation with you. But I have a good question here that I'll point over to Jim. Jim, when it comes to managing Windows Server with Intune and Azure AD domain, what's your take on that?
So right now, Intune does not support managing Windows Server OSs. So unfortunately, you're still going to have to rely on group policy and Active Directory if you want to have a centralized management for all that.
Yeah, but let's have a conversation around that in terms of leveraging things like Arc. Let's have a conversation about using Entra ID domain services or what used to be Active Directory domain services through Azure. We can definitely, there is some cohesion that we can build or workarounds that we can have, or from an infrastructure perspective, that make those processes much simpler and easier.
Definitely. And this concludes us to the end of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for tuning in. As you see on the last slide, sign up, talk to an expert. Go ahead and click on that link. And we do have another good show for you upcoming. It's going to be all surrounding of Microsoft Entra ID, enable AI readiness, and master identity governance. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. There are wonderful questions. Go ahead and send us that email, and we're happy to get this engagement started with you. Thank you again. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.